You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. Let's head down now to Tallahassee. Very pleased to be joined again by Carter Karels from NoleSports.com. Joined us a few weeks back as Florida State was kicking off camp. Of course, they got to start a week earlier because they do play week 0. And good enough to join us again. Carter, we appreciate it, man. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
It's our pleasure. We appreciate you for coming back. So Florida State's a little more than a week away from their week 0 opener. Do you get a sense that this is a team, a program ready to play a football game yet?
Yeah, absolutely. They actually had a chance to start preseason camp much earlier than everyone else did since they got a week 0 game. And I think they're kind of anxiously waiting to get that game kicked off. They really had their toughest stretch of practice last week, and they've kind of ramped it down a little bit this week. And they've started kind of implementing more game week sort of situations and, preparing a little bit more for that first week 0 matchup against Duquesne. So I think they're ready to get this thing started, and we're 9 days away.
I saw that Florida State practiced in Jacksonville. How? Why? Is that a normal thing? Can you kind of fill us in there?
Yeah, so they started it last year. Before that, they did a couple practices in the preseason at IMG Academy a couple different years. But the last 2 years, it's been in Jacksonville. And the reason is simply to just make the team feel uncomfortable. Kind of like a little church camp or some sort of like time away where the team can bond. They're sleeping in uncomfortable twin beds without pillows, and they're spending the whole time with the team. When you're in preseason camp on campus, you go back to your apartment, you go back to your girlfriend, you still kind of live out your personal life. But in this setting, you're only with the team, you're only doing things with the team, and it's very much a camp-like environment. And they also try to make them very uncomfortable, and as far as how physical the practices were. Those were the most physical practices they had all preseason camp, and really their mission was let's try to find out what this team's identity is. By the end of the week, they had 6 straight practices. Last Saturday, they had their second scrimmage of the preseason, and we asked Mike Norvell, okay, what's the identity? And he said, I think this team is tough. This is a team that, in other words, he basically was saying this is a team that can kind of fight through adversity. If there's an injury or if there's a tough day, this is a team that can finish well in November. So that was kind of the point of that, to test the team and see how they responded. And I think Mike Norvell liked how they responded.
Carter, we talked the last time you were here about how Florida State had to dip into the transfer portal, similar to how LSU did as well. As best you can tell, or as open as players and coaches are being, who have been the standouts so far, maybe the unknowns that seem to have emerged here in this camp?
From the transfer portal or just in general?
I would say just in general.
That maybe wasn't expected is what you're meaning?
Either way. Who's been standing out?
Yeah, just so I'll give you a transfer, actually. Johnny Wilson at wide receiver is a big name to know. He really has the potential to be their leading receiver this year. He is a 6'7", 235-pound receiver who transferred in from Arizona State. To begin his career, had a lot of issues with staying healthy and dropping the football and just being on the field. And you saw that in the spring, but he finally kind of put it all together, and now he is the most dominant receiver they have in practice. He's a huge target at 6'7", 235. He's that guy that can get down those jump balls for you. So whether he is more of a red zone guy or your top option, I think that's what Florida State's going to find out. He still needs to be a little bit more consistent, but that's a guy to watch. Tatum Bethune is another guy who's really popped at linebacker. He transferred in from UCF. Jamie Robinson was the first-team All-ACC safety last season, and he's really come on the last few practices. And I think the running back group, they feel really strong about where that group is right now. They've got a transfer from the University of Oregon and Trey Benson, who I think is their most complete back with the combination of power, speed, explosiveness. Lawrence Toafili is another guy who, Mike Norvell called the other day the most improved player on the roster. And then you got Trayshawn Ward, a former walk-on who earned a scholarship last season and did a pretty good job. And he's just another guy in there. I think it's kind of a three-headed monster at running back that they feel really good about.
A couple more for you. Carter Karels is our guest from NolesSports.com. That's a Tallahassee Democrat. Let's talk quarterback. You have an incumbent there in Jordan Travis. How, based so far, what's sort of a realistic expectation for him in growth year to year?
So I think he has been a hard quarterback to judge in years past because his weapons have been just bad, plain out bad. I mean, if you were to rank all the wide receiving groups in the ACC last year, Florida State's by far is last place. And it was a position they really needed to solidify. They added 4 transfers. They feel a lot better about that. But, to judge a guy who just doesn't have any weapons is kind of hard. But now that he has better weapons, you've seen him hit on more plays down the field. You see him have more confidence in the decisions that he's making. And just overall, more one-on-one opportunities, right? There are more receivers beating their man one-on-one. And so because of that, you're naturally going to have, a lot more of those plays down the field. And, what makes Jordan Travis special is his legs. But I think where you've seen him take his game to the next level this offseason has been kind of the confidence he's had in the pocket, the decision-making, and just kind of the deep balls from him. I still don't think this is a receiving group that is super great. I don't know if they have a top option just yet. I talked about Johnny Wilson. He hasn't been consistent enough to really say, oh, he's going to be number one. So, it's a stacked year at quarterback in the ACC this year. I would probably rank Jordan Travis right in the middle of that group, 7th, 6th, 7th, 8th. I think is a reasonable expectation. But he should definitely take a jump this year because the weapons around him are better, the offensive line's better, and the running back position, I believe, is better.
Glaring weaknesses right now on the roster?
Well, so when you look at offense, I would just say they don't have that number one option at receiver. They don't have a Keyshawn Butte, right?
Right.
Not many teams do, but
right.
They really don't. And then maybe offensive line, I think it is much better of an offensive line than when Mike Norvell walked through the door. It was one of the nation's worst when he walked in the door. It's still not great, but it's not atrocious. But it's still not great. Defensively, I mean, they had to replace the ACC Defensive Player of the Year in Jermaine Johnson and a third-team All-ACC defensive end in Keir Thomas. So I think the defensive ends will take a step back this year. But I think where the weaknesses lie are more with the offense than the defense. I think the defense doesn't have as many glaring weaknesses, whereas the offense, the weapons and just, the tight end room and the O-line, they're still not where they should be. And the defense has definitely been better than the offense this offseason.
Hey, Carter, before you go, I noticed also in your Twitter bio that you work for the South Bend Tribune, so you covered Notre Dame, and I would presume Brian
Yeah.
Kelly as well. So, um, let me flip it, knowing what you know about Brian Kelly and covering the game a year ago with Florida State and Notre Dame. Um, what do you think about Brian Kelly in particular in this first year with LSU?
Man, how much time do you have?
As much as you need.
Brian Kelly is just fascinating to me because it's like he has reinvented himself and adapted in so many ways since he became Notre Dame's head coach. And I think this is just another step in the evolution for him. And I think time will tell if it was a good bet or not. I think when you look at LSU, there are reasons to suggest why he would succeed and why he wouldn't succeed. Why he would succeed is, if Les Miles and Ed Orgeron can do it, why can't a guy who has, had so much success at a place like Notre Dame and, can have a better recruiting base, a better geography to recruit from, why can't he have success there? That's the reason for that. The second, the reason why he may not have success is, what are you measuring as success? Because when you're going up against Alabama and A&M and, potentially Georgia, and now you're adding OU and Texas to the mix, are LSU fans going to be okay if he's rebuilding and doesn't get 11 or 12 wins for the next couple seasons? Because that might be what it requires. And so I think he's going to be great for LSU in terms of stabilizing that program, because I think it was a little chaotic over the last couple of years. They needed someone to come in there and stabilize it. And this is someone who, ever since 2017, he's been smart in terms of making the right decisions, making the right hires, having the right philosophies. So I think that will be good for stabilizing that program. It's just long term, is this somebody who can take them to and win a national championship? Because I think ultimately that's the goal for him. That's what success is measured by at LSU. And it's a really hard standard. And you can be a great coach and not win a championship. And that happened with him at Notre Dame. So whether that happens at LSU, I'm not sure. But again, I think the floor with him is high because he's someone who's going to stabilize that program and build a pretty promising future for them.
Great perspective. Carter Karels, thanks so much for a couple of minutes, man. I will certainly bother you again before this game. Thanks for the time today, man.
Yeah, man, have a ton of Brian Kelly stories. So if you ever need me, I'm here for you.
You got 15 more minutes?
Are you serious? You want me to?
I was going to talk about the Saints being the most complete team in the NFL next, but I'll take Brian Kelly stories if you want, or we can do it another day. Up to you.
Hey, man, I'll tell you one.
Okay.
So I was actually not covering Florida State last season. I was at the South Bend Tribune, got laid off last March, and I didn't get this job until January. So I was kind of a free agent, and I was on vacation and was actually in Baton Rouge the week after he was hired at LSU. And I went to this restaurant, I think it's called Karels.
Parans, yeah, Parans.
Parans?
Yeah, Parans.
And I sit down, I'm with my girlfriend, I just look over to my right, and there he is, Brian Kelly, right to my right. And I couldn't believe it. This was during the firestorm of everything that had happened. It had been 2 days, I think, since the whole family debacle. And all of this had happened that week. And I'm like, what are the odds that this happened? He's probably a little creeped out that, he's probably thinking that I stopped him and just showed up. But no, it was just total coincidence. And so I went up to him. We talked for a good long time. And one of the things that really was hilarious was he I don't know how this got brought up, but I just said, yeah, you got a Southern accent now, I hear. And he genuinely had no idea, like, why everyone was talking about that. He was like, yeah, what's the deal with that? I don't even understand what I said or what I did. Was it a word I used? And I said, man, Brian, I think it's because you said family. And he just starts dying laughing. And I think what I like about Brian is he's not afraid to make fun of himself. He's a pretty funny guy, and he was totally cool with me making fun of his Southern accent. So it was a good time. And I did tell him that was actually at the time I was taking the FSU job. I told him, yeah, I'm taking the FSU job. And I think the person with him was like, we don't say Florida State around here because that's our opener next season. So they were already thinking about Florida State last December.
Well, that one's been circled for a while for obvious reasons. Carter, we're going to visit again. I'd love to go down that rabbit hole even further, but you've been very generous with your time, man. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir. You guys have a good one.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.